How cool's this? Welcome to Belstaff. I feel like I shouldn't be saying welcome. I should say thank you for having us here, an iconic brand. My name's Jim Hamilton. If you don't know who I am, I'm one of the greatest rugby players who ever played. So you do know me. And I'm joined by Billy Bolt, who is actually an incredible athlete, but I thought I'd let you do your introduction. I wouldn't do it justice.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm Bill Bolt, professional enduro motorbike racer. Won 7 world championships, and been working with Belstaff for a couple of years now, and delighted to be here, joined by Jim. I'm quite excited, really. I think it's rare. I haven't really done too much sit-down talky business from the perspective or the interviewer that's kind of not within my industry, but at the same time from such a high level of the sporting world. So I think it should give some quite nice insights this evening.
Lovely. Well, this is a conversation. We were like, is this an interview? Is it a podcast? It's a conversation, and we're going to keep it quite intimate. So at the end, there'll be a bit of a Q&A. So if you've got any burning questions, then we'll come to you at the end and we'll talk about that. But you mentioned the relationship with Belstaff. It's actually really cool to be here. I don't know if you know that this is a Belstaff jacket, but actually seeing the collaboration with the brand, in culture, in movies, and now crossing over into sport is quite something. We were talking about it as well. Like, I put myself loosely as an athlete. I'm an ex-athlete. I retired 7 years ago. But yourself, Billy, in your industry, it isn't just about riding now, is it? It's about building the brand. It's about these kind of collaborations, which is probably a little bit outside the comfort zone of people in your sport, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think more specifically in kind of the motorsport niche or the kind of disciplines which are racing, I feel like it's quite unheard of and not too much branching out into the outside world, especially not the culture, pop culture, fashion culture world. So I feel quite lucky to be, I would say, somewhere near the forefront of that, and to be able to come events like this and just try and bridge the gap really between some cool in brands and rather than it just be kind of the same old repetitive cycle that's within the industry that kind of doesn't really go anywhere. So no, quite lucky to have such a collaboration. And then obviously Belstaff's had quite a long history with motorcycle in general, and I don't want to make a mess of saying where that started or where that's come from, but I just know like it has a deep heritage in motorsport in general. So I think it's a brand that ties in very well with kind of like myself and my journey from where I've came from.
Yeah, just as a casual fan of motorsports and bikes in general, I ride, for any of you that don't see that in me. I would have been a road racer if I was smaller. Fearless as well, but it's a cool industry. It's a cool industry where we're starting to see, literally no pun intended, like under the helmet, and Formula One kind of led that charge, but you're one of these guys now in your industry that's leading the charge, and you kind of gave a loose introduction into what you do. I wanted to do the introduction and say that you ride bikes and you ride fast and you ride on trails. Maybe just go a little bit deeper into what you do, because you're an incredible athlete as well as building your brand. You're in your prime, and we'll talk about some of the stuff that you have to go through to be able to perform, but maybe just go into a bit more depth. You don't just ride fast round mountains or obstacle courses. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, that's the top and bottom of it, to be fair. It's just going for me to be as fast as possible, but no, the disciplines I do I mainly do a super enduro, which happens kind of winter months in stadiums, arenas, and various places around mainly Europe, occasionally outside, but that's on like a short, super intense track inside stadiums and stuff, like I say, winter months. And then the rest of the year, which will actually kick off like this weekend, coming, I race hard enduro, which is kind of previously known as extreme enduro, or had a few different variations of it, but it's basically just the maddest, wildest contraptions of tracks you can think of, sometimes in quarries, mountains, rivers, just about as gnarly or as extreme as you could think of. We tend to go and usually race. Sometimes it gets to the point where we have to push our bikes to get to the top, but it's all of the, not that often, but occasionally comes down to just borderline survival in some of our races, to be honest. But they're the hardest kind of terrain you can imagine, really. That tends to be where we go race motorbikes.
Yeah, survival is a really interesting word, and I think in a sport that you're in, you can maybe, I don't want to make it like a headline conversation around that, but we had a private conversation upstairs, and I've been retired from sport now 7 years, and it's amazing when you walk into an environment like this where everyone's normal size, right? And I'm clearly not a normal size human, but having played professional sport all my life, and then you transition out of professional sport 7 years ago and you go into the real world with normal people, you realize to a degree you're not that normal. And it's taken me a few years to become comfortable with the fact that I'm not a normal human being. In order to do the career that I did as a professional rugby player and put my body and mind literally on the line, I've realized that it takes abnormal traits to do that. And I think one thing that people are really drawn to when it comes to sport, and especially the industry that you're in, is that you have to be an outlier. You have to be a one percenter to do what you do and the dangers. And I think that there's an element of people in this room, or the people that watch the sport on TV, are captivated by people who ride, and they ride fast. I just want to ask a little bit about that, about where is your headspace when you're doing that? Do you feel the dangers? Do you understand the dangers, or are you completely switched off to that? Are you one of those?
I'm not really sure, to be honest.
I don't know if you ever saw Free Solo, where the guy's climbing with no ropes,
No.
and then they scanned his brain, and there was a part of it of fear that was switched off.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely situations I could be in where I think, well, this would be far from ideal if it went wrong. But at the same time, you're in a racing environment, and it's my job to get to the finish line as fast as possible, which I guess you kind of does answer your question that, yeah, I guess the majority of people would be happy to switch off and then forget about the fact that they were in a race and just say, okay, let's just survive at this point. Whereas, in my head, it's the whole time it's a race, and it's about getting through it as fast as possible. So I guess to a certain extent, yeah, and even just in terms of like the way I view it, not even the extreme or the super gnarly parts of the track. It could just be an open section, not too difficult section, but just, again, the speed that I'm willing to go through it. I guess you could also argue is that there's a part where the majority of people would be happy at a certain point, but if that's not going to win the race, that's not fast enough.
What kind of jeopardy are you working with? Maybe obviously falling off the bike.
Yeah.
But what kind of real jeopardy under fatigue and with the...
Yeah, fatigue in general is one, to be honest. I've definitely hit the wall a few times out there where I've just had nothing left to give, and I've been at a point where I've collapsed I woke up from being asleep on my handlebars, or just got to point mid riverbed where my body's just decided it wants to have a lie down, and that's where it's happening. That's usually due to the fact of coming back from injury and not having prepared how I would like to. I would ideally not want to put myself in that situation, but I guess that's where, it does kind of agree with your point, really, where I'm quite methodical in a lot of ways, where like I know I can usually have a good understanding. Okay, today I'm going to be capable of winning or being on the podium. I'm going to be up there. Or today I'm not. I'm quite well aware of my situation that I'm in. But at the same time, if I'm don't think that I'm capable, or physically I'm not prepared like I need to be, but I'm so far the start of the day goes well, or I might be leading at one point, then there's going to be no part of me that's shutting off. So I have kept pushing to the point where, like I say, I have passed out there, or fell asleep, or the body decided didn't want to go anymore.
What about injuries then? I know this is something that comes up. People ask me all the time, talk to me about your injuries. I can share some if you want, but in your sport, I know it's been part of your journey naturally, and you look at the sport you're in, whatever discipline that may be, some of them can as we saw as well yesterday, they're life-ending, threatening. It's a crazy industry that you're in.
Yeah, it is, and just want to say a huge condolences to all parties and families involved with what did happen at the British Superbikes this weekend. But yeah, and to me, injuries are just kind of part and parcel. It comes with it, really. I've been, well aware from a very young age that if this is what you're going to choose to do, then injuries can happen. It's not really something that's ever bothered us, really. I've definitely had my fair share of them, and spend a lot of time watching from the sidelines when I would have loved to be taking part. But like I say, it's never been something that's kind of slowed us down or really put us off at all.
I'm going to tell you tell us to tell you which ones you've had, some of your worst injuries. But can I just share some of mine, if I may? So I played professional rugby for 15 years. So I played for Scotland for 10. And yeah, Scottish fan. Yeah, we played in the barren period for Scotland, okay? I set the foundations for what we're starting to see now. There's a real development in the team. But you know what? Like, I've never really fronted up to this as well, because there's almost like a frustration when you come out of the game that, you know, at the age of 41 that you're limping around. But I was just saying to my kids, and my lad just broke his leg, and he's like, "Dad, what injuries did you have?" And I started profiling them. So just hear me out if I may. Play rugby, they say, but I nearly lost my eye, had to have my eyelid reconstructed, broke my orbital bone, had a plate put in there, broke my jaw. I've had 4 shoulder reconstructions, broke my sternum. I've got a pin in my clavicle. I mentioned I broke my sternum, 4 ribs. One was a compound fracture. I broke my leg twice, dislocated my ankle 3 times, number of fingers, and that's without even the brain as well, which has been knocked about a little bit. And I love the sport, play rugby, they say. But that's part of it. Like, I think you wear that sometime as a badge of honour, that you've lived. You've been out there and you've actually put your body through something. So as difficult as it may be, I actually look at that as like, fuck, you know what I mean? I've done it. I can't walk, but I've done it. You know?
I think, to be honest, I'm of a similar mindset, really. Like, it's part of it, really. I think it makes you who you are today. It's part of your makeup, really. Each time you've learned or there's been something come of it. And I think it's quite easy. I guess luckily, I've never really fell into the mindset, but it's quite easy to say, like, oh, only look at the negative side of injuries and stuff like that. But I think, I've been lucky to be always of the mindset, you know, there's positives going to come from it. They're going to heal. Luckily, doctors are pretty good these days. You can just about come back from anything, recover from anything. And yeah, like I said, I've been lucky to get back from just about every setback I've had, and not been too deterred from it.
What's your worst one?
I broke my leg in December 2018, and the leg break wasn't really particularly bad, but it stretched the peroneal nerve in the outside of my leg. So I basically had drop foot for a year, where I couldn't lift my foot and I couldn't move my foot out. But the thing I learned the most at that point was that human beings don't really have a clue how nerves work. Even doctors would openly admit, like, I don't know what's happening inside your leg. Which is quite a scary prospect, really, when you're, like, you know, lying in a hospital bed. I'd just won my first world championship kind of 3 weeks earlier. So it was really kind of high to a low moment. Just won the outdoor championship of 2018. And then getting ready to go into the 2019 indoor championship the Monday before the first round, and the preparation had gone really, really well. I felt like probably one of the best I've ever felt going into it. And at that point, had a small crash on the last practice ride I was going to have, broke my leg, and for about a week didn't really even know. Well, I went to hospital. So immediately after the crash, I couldn't move my ankle, couldn't lift my foot. So I was like, oh, broke my ankle. So I went into hospital telling them I've broke my ankle. I need an x-ray because I couldn't move my foot whatsoever. Had an x-ray and they're like, no, the ankle's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, but I had to like hold my leg in this position. That would be the only position I was comfortable. So then they're like, no, we need to look at your knee and your leg, and developed. And pretty much, I was in hospital probably 4 or 5 days initially. Still didn't really have any answers to why my foot wouldn't work. Got told various different things, but laid there wondering if my foot would ever work again. So more from a not severity of injury point of view, but just wondering, what was happening, and again just being told over and over, like, oh, nerves are very serious. Nobody really knows anything about nerves. Nerves take years and years to recover, etc., etc. It was a pretty spooky place to be for a while.
You see how just speaks about it casually, and in normal life, like it's not normal. That's my point in all this, like when you're not a normal person.
Yeah, but so I started, basically my leg healed And the doctor, knee surgeon, and the guy who pinned my leg had said, no, you're healed now, you're good to go, you can ride again. But obviously my foot didn't work at all at this point. And the initial plan of recovery, because the first doctor told us, oh no, give your nerve 3 to 6 months and it should start working again, it should start firing, you'll be all good. So I was like, oh well, I'll wait until everything's healed before I start to ride again. So yeah, I think it was about 5 months went by. The knee doctor said, no, you're good to go. Start riding as you please. You're not going to damage your foot anymore riding. So I did. And then once I figured I could still ride fine without my foot working, I wasn't too bothered. I was happy to carry on as normal. So yeah, I did. And then forgot about the foot for a few more months until a separate surgeon said to us, you should probably get that looked at because it's still not working and it's been like 9 months now. So then I did. I went to a nerve specialist and he said, no, you need to go for surgery immediately, and paused the ride, put the riding back on pause. But like yesterday, once I had that first ride and figured out, even without the foot working, I was going to be all right. I was going to be able to carry on playing around on motorbikes. I was pretty happy, to be honest.
I wanted to talk about the feeling of being locked in at the highest level, and I mean, as in mentally when you're doing things. But again, just to share a conversation we were having upstairs around a conversation I had with my children when they asked me what it was like playing professional sport. And I found myself actually getting quite emotional when I was telling them the story, because I don't like to look back. I think what's been has been, and it's about what's next. But the only way that I could describe it to the kids was like the most alive I've ever felt, which is a really hard thing to say when your wife and your kids are there, right? Because that should be the happiest moments of your life. No, anyone's got children. Okay, it's good. It's okay. It's great. But playing sport at the highest level, and I was lucky enough to play in 2 World Cups and playing Champions Cup finals. But again, I've never really thought about it. But when I did reflect and I went deep into it with my son, and I was talking about running out into a stadium where it felt like a coliseum and it felt like you were not even meant to be there, like you were floating as you came out. You felt like a gladiator when you ran out. That feeling of being alive is something that I've never managed to recreate. And I'd say when it's all said and done, that's the one thing that I miss. I'm even struggling to explain what it is now. You're in that moment there with higher jeopardy as a solo athlete. I know you have a team around you. Just kind of explain to people in here what it's like in that moment when you are the most locked in, the most alive you could ever feel. Is alive the right word? Would you explain it like that or not?
I'm not sure at what point I would specifically relate that to from my side. Like, I can get it from your side because like I've even been at sporting events, football games where the players have come out the tunnel and like that energy I can almost fully appreciate. I'm not sure what I would specifically relate that to, but there's been times. I've definitely had times where you kind of talk about the locked in or the in the zone moment where you're not thinking. Like, even I've had races where I think back as to what happened and I'm like, I can't even recall what's just happened. But like performance wise or whatever, it's been one of my best ones. So yeah, definitely had the it's not really an out of body experience, but almost like that scenario you're talking about. But relating to kind of a direct comparison, we don't really have that like walkout. We do kind of opening ceremonies or intros and stuff, but I think that's not really the time when we would be locked in, because it's kind of like, just I guess as the race starts, you kind of really I get a super dry mouth, in fact, just before the race is gonna begin. Like the 5 minutes or 3 minutes, you kind of once you've left the mechanic, go to the start line, and that period there where it's like you're not talking to anyone, no one's talking to you. You kind of dry mouth, stomach gets tight, and you're like, just have to tell yourself it's time to go race.
One thing that I picked up from some of your vlogs on YouTube, which are brilliant, by the way, I know a lot of people have been saying that, there'll be a few people that watch them in here. You get a real insight into your industry. It's kind of what you think it would be, right? It's almost like chaos, a circus, a brotherhood. and actually seeing your partner in some of the clips as well, and seeing a few of the ladies dotted about, they must be thinking, what the hell is going on? Like, they've got this band of brothers where it is absolute madness. You get a real insight into that. Maybe just share what it's like being around these like-minded nutters, I suppose it is, with all due respect.
Yeah, it is. I think it's slightly unorthodox in terms of the structure of for the most part, pretty much all riders get on pretty well with each other. Like, we'll hang about, we train together a little bit, or we'll hang around after, get a beer with each other. Like, we're all pretty good friends. I think you kind of have to be, given the situations we can often find ourselves in. There's times when the organizers or the race people might get the track a little bit wrong, and it gets to the point where, like, this becomes physically unable to ride up, never mind race up. So then we have to start helping each other or whatever. So I think there has to be that kind of mutual respect amongst us. And just given the fact that the races, for the outside person looking in, are kind of so mental, like the mountains, the areas that we're riding in, it is chaos, really. And I'm lucky, the team that I have around me, with the two mechanics I have, Roxy, my wife, it works so well for me, I would say. Like, the race and everything else is utter chaos, and I think the vlog does give a good indication as to just how all over the place and kind of mad my life is. But I am very lucky that the direct people I have around is that they all fit into that life so well, really, and it kind of definitely makes my life easier to get the job done.
What about the wider community of the sport? And we were having a laugh about it. I said, I don't imagine it's like going to Monaco, right?
No,
and watching the characters that are knocking about there. We're thinking transit vans, right? We're thinking horse and carts.
A dusty
We're thinking
car
salt
park.
of the earth.
A dusty car park is you're lucky if you have a tarmac car park, to be honest, at most of our paddocks. So from that end of this, we're the opposite end of the spectrum from Monaco, you could say. But yeah, like I say, I mean, it's part and parcel of it, really. I think the terrain and the areas we need, and even just, I guess, the personalities and the people in our sport, I think it works. It goes well. Don't get us wrong. I think there's times when we could definitely upscale a little bit and go. There's times when we could go a bit more market, but at the same time, it is one of the things that has built our sport to what it is that a lot of the events, they have kind of 500, 600, 700 people racing them, and you get, your average hobby guys can turn up and be on the same start line as your kind of 10, 15 riders that's competing for the World Championship.
Yeah, I think there's a real grounding, isn't there? Maybe when you've got them people around you, when I suppose in the industry you're in and the success that you've had and being a champion and the brands are coming in and you're building your brand, that there's actually a humbleness by having these people around.
And ultimately in our sport, it's them people that is keeping the sport alive, really. They're the people that's buying the bikes. They're the people that's buying the clothing, the gear, so you have to be aware, like, the racetrack might be a racetrack for me to go and race around as fast as possible, but it's also relying on them crashing and their bikes tumbling back down and needing them to pay to fix it and parts to fix it. That's kind of keeping the whole ecosystem of the sport going, really.
Are you noticing the effect that you're having by putting yourself out there? So again, some of the clips you've seen, like, kids are coming up, they're getting to sign things, which is really cool. Like, what is the health of the sport like coming through?
Yeah, I think it's definitely getting a much more of a younger audience in the last couple of years. Like, whenever I don't really race too often in the UK, but whenever I do, like, it's such a healthy showing of a young crowd and kids coming up for autographs and pictures and stuff like that. So I think it does help. I think, just doing the YouTube stuff to the level I am, you get such an engaged audience rather than, everyone's attention spans a couple of seconds on social media these days. Whereas if you can lock someone in for a 10, 15-minute vlog, that they do become really engaged and want to know what you have to say. So, yeah, I'm trying. I enjoy doing what I'm doing anyway, so I'll probably do it anyway. Just thankfully people do watch it, so it doesn't make it a complete waste of time. But yeah, like I say, I enjoy that side of it and putting myself out there and doing the work I do off the bike anyway, which I guess helps.
What about some of the places you've been? So weird and wonderful. I saw Romania on one. I'm not saying Romania is weird and wonderful. I've been there. It's lovely, lovely spot.
It's weird and wonderful, that's for
Edgy.
sure. Yeah, Romania is quite a hot topic for us, really. Red Bull Romaniacs was one of the original races which really helped push our sport forward. Or there was many kind of viral clips went round from that race, and that is, I would say, the toughest race of the year by far. That's a kind of a 5-day rally, well, 1 day in the city, then a 4-day rally in the mountains, 6, 7, 8 hour days, 4 days in a row. It's the hardest one by far.
Craziest places you've been? Give me some places. Might have some stories on them as well. So you got Romania?
Yeah, we got Romania, Serbia.
Never been Serbia. I'd like to though.
We did a race in Israel.
Oh, I went to Jerusalem once.
Yeah.
Got a tattoo. Got a tattoo in Jerusalem. Yeah, randomly.
There's a race in Lesotho, which is a small country within South Africa. I kind of think Tennessee. We do a race in kind of middle of nowhere, Tennessee, which is
Come on then. What are the Americans like there? I know what they're like.
Well, that area, that specific part of America feels like you've gone back in time quite a few years. Put it that way. Like such a passionate dirt bike crowding community in that area, but it is quite a wild place. You definitely feel out there. I can't even think really. You go. What's your weirdest place?
Well, I said I went to Jerusalem. I took my wife on holiday to Egypt. First holiday, got my first big contract when I was at Leicester, £10,000 a year. So I thought I'd treat my wife to a holiday to Egypt. So we went there, and there was like a sandstorm, and so we couldn't hang around on the resort like you do there. So we took an excursion to Jerusalem. You've got to go over 2 borders to get there. And what do you do in Jerusalem? Well, there's 2 things. One is you go and visit the Wailing Wall, which we did, and the other was I went to get a tattoo. And I remember going into the tattoo shop, and the guy was like, yes, what would you like? And I said, I want to get James, which is the family name. So my name's Jim, but I got James under the arm. So the very first tattoo, my wife's like, why would you do something like that when you're here?
Also wondering that.
Well, let me tell you even more. So then I got my first big contract, okay, £35,000 a year. So we went to Dubai, and I was lying on the beach with the kids, and you were getting delivered water and like melon and like Fiji water and melon. We were being spoiled. And I was lying on the beach, and the guy kept walking past, and he's shouting Samaj. He's like, water, melon, Samaj. I went up to him. I said, mate, what's going on with my family? I'm a rugby legend. I'm a podcaster. Why do you keep shouting Samaj at us? And he said, your tattoo, it says Samaj. I said, no, it says James. He says, no, because the Arabic, they write backwards. So... Yeah, so I had that done as well. But, travel's a big part of sport, right? And actually, I was talking to some Canadian. I said I was going to say American then. I don't want to swear. But travel's a big part of that, isn't it? It's like the heartbeat, I suppose, of sport because of the different cultures. But what we always found in rugby was, regardless of wherever you went, even if it was a foreign language or the people looked different, everyone speaks sport, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you're in our industry, because it's so short-lived, I retired at 34, and you're in it, and it's wild and it's fast. But actually, the desirability of playing sport, and the irony is you only do it for 10 years, but it's the world language over. It doesn't matter, you can speak a different language, but when you do sport and you do something that wows people, there's that common connection, I don't know if that was a question. It was just me getting around. So, but when you look at it, I mean, like, just talk about how great it is being an athlete. Like, do you ever stop and reminisce when you're injured and like, I don't want to say that you're lucky. I don't believe in luck at all. But actually, like, my life is cool. It is good.
Yeah, all the time. To be honest, like, I think riding bikes, it's on the limit. Like, obviously, it is sport and I am an athlete, but I also just look at it to the point of like, I get to play around on motorbikes. Like, that's the top and bottom of it. Like, yeah, okay, thankfully I'm quite good at racing them, which helps to the cause that allows us to play around on them. But just being able to say, I've got a couple of people running around after us fixing them, and I just get to play on them. It's pretty mad to think, to be honest.
And why do you think humans are interested in sports like you. I mean, we've got 1 million people in the room tonight, and that they've come out, but there's a human interest in the sports that we've been in, your sport specifically. Do you think it is the danger? Do you think it's the jeopardy? Do you think it's the fact that they wouldn't get on a bike because of the dangers involved in that?
I think a lot of people do get on a bike and realize it's quite difficult, but then our sport specifically, in terms of like often we'll be trying hills that we can get up but someone else can't get up, or like I think it's quite easy to get on a bike and find your limits as to what you can do and to where you then can't go anymore. So then it's quite easy to appreciate those that can do that, to be honest. Like even now, like I'll see videos of the top level racers from other disciplines, and like they come quite easily, pretty blown away, and are massive fans of various other riders of different disciplines, So I think you can get on a bike and quite easily appreciate what someone's doing, to be honest, which is why I think it doesn't quite have the out of industry eyes it could potentially have, because again, not everybody's been in that position or been fortunate enough that position to ride a bike, but at the same time, quite a lot of people have.
We're going to come out for some questions, so just have a think. We'll keep it interactive, but just before we do that, what's coming up? I know that you're kind of on the road now, following your socials, doing that. What's the next big thing that you've got
so we've got the first round of the Hard Enduro World Championship this weekend in Wales. That's round 1 of 7-round championship now, which will be kind of the main priority for the rest of summer. That runs until, I think, end of October or start of November, I think it is this year. So that'll be the main priority. There'll be kind of 1 or 2 extra races come up there, which I'll do. And then, just documenting, making videos, vlogs along the way. Like I say, I mean, I'm quite fortunate really that I enjoy all that extra stuff and making myself far too busy, but like I say, it's enjoyable for me, so we'll keep doing that. But like I say, World Championship starts this weekend. It's been I'm somewhat healthy as well at this point, which has been the first time that I've came into the outdoor season at least healthy since 2021, so I'm quite excited and keen to get going at that and just kind of build some momentum, which is one thing that I haven't had for the last few years.
That's really cool. I think my Scottish friend, have you got a question? Our Scottish journalist, have you? Hello, sir. Very good, sir. I can translate, by the way, because he's a true Scot. Okay.
That's a terrible low. Quick question. You said you ride water bikes. What do you ride?
Oh, gosh.
How did that come about? Tell me a bit about that.
I feel embarrassed saying. I really do. Yeah. So a Harley Davidson. So I had a Harley Davidson when I was in France. Harley Davidson breakout because I saw Hell's Angels as well. Do you even call it? That's a horrible kind of comparison to say, but I thought that was cool. The Outlaws in the States when I was younger, but I saw myself as Jax and had that. But the roads were great in France. Actually, I loved it. And you know what? Actually, I jest there. One thing that I've realised with people who ride bikes who've either played sport or they've been in the military specifically, I've got a lot of military friends, when we talk about like why you ride. And I think when you have the kind of chaotic mind as a man and women, but as a man specifically, because I know actually the feeling of purpose, the feeling of like just you and the road, there's a real kind of endearment that I feel towards that. And so I had a bike in France as well, and I'm a coffee shop bike rider. Like I go in between because I live in Scotland. The roads are awful, but I think there's a real beauty in a human being and a piece of equipment like that. The engineering around it as well, I've always been blown away by. So I've said to my wife once the kids leave and as I get a bit older, I'd love to go on a tour around the world and see the world from a different perspective, because you live in these busy periods of life and you're looking after your children, and I get to travel, but I do it in a completely different way. A lot of the time you're just down on your phone scrolling, taking pictures, showing everyone actually how good your life is, whereas in fact, and you'll know better than anyone, when you're on a bike there's no room to think about anything else. And I think there's a real kind of beauty, and my manager Alex, he rides as well and we talk about it. So so in a short, I had a bike in France because I thought it looked cool, but actually there's a more deep story around that.
Yeah, when you're out about, you're in the landscape.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
Gary, can I ask, what general fitness routine do you follow?
Oh, it depends what day of the week. It depends what side of the bed I get up on.
You must need a level of general fitness to be able to stay on that high at a racing speed for a long time.
Yeah, so it's quite tricky. Our sport specifically doesn't. It's very unique in the sense, one race could be 2 hours long. 2 weeks later, you might go to a race that's 5 days long. So it's really difficult. I'm quite a person that struggles to follow kind of a set routine anyway. And I think, having a schedule which is kind of A, so much traveling, and B, you need to be ready for so many different things. It's, there's nothing really too specific. I've always been under the impression I don't really train that much. I do too much off the bike training, but then if I really add up the amount of time I've spent injured and rehabbing from injuries and stuff over the last 3 years, I probably have actually spent quite a few days in a gym. It's been such a long time since I've had a prolonged period where I've been able to focus on training rather than rehabbing an injury. It's quite a difficult question to answer, but in some ways I feel like I am lucky. I'm in a sport where I can do just about anything as long as it's kind of on two wheels. I feel like it's somewhat beneficial, but I am someone who definitely enjoys riding a bike more than I do spending time in a gym. So yeah, as much time as possible on two wheels.
That's where you feel happiest.
Yeah, and I think I struggle if I don't feel like something like more off the bike training, if I don't feel like it's having a direct relevance, then I really struggle to get on board with it. Whereas, riding a bike. It's going to be useful and helpful in the race. So that's where, I'd rather go ride for an hour and a half around a motocross track and then go and ride on my two-stroke, ride hard enduro in the evening and do 2 sessions a day on a bike than 2 in a gym, put it that way. So yeah, like I say, each race, again, I do tailor my training quite a bit differently depending on what race is coming up next. But yeah, it's really, I can't really give you a specific answer to that question because my life doesn't really allow too much structure.
Yes, sir.
Billy, you're obviously in this great position to be able to say to your bike manufacturer that you like to run in particular races. Do you have anything like the Dakar or any other race that are on your bucket list?
It's not on my bucket list. Definitely not the Dakar. It's something that I think at some point of my life or career, then it will be a more serious consideration. I know I'm quite close with quite a few Dakar riders and stuff, so I know quite a lot what goes into it or what's needed. I think, it will definitely be a more serious conversation somewhere down the line. I think it's something what I've followed since I was a kid, and I do. It does, a lot of it does appeal to us, but at the same time, like I said, I'm quite aware of what's needed to go there and to be successful and competitive there. It's a very different kind of race and requires a lot more skill than just riding a bike. You need to be able to navigate and read the terrain and this desert and stuff like that. So a lot goes into it, but I think at some point down the line, there'll be more of a serious consideration.
Question for both of you, really. You talk about getting locked in for a race. Same as yourself, Jim. What is your pre-game or pre-race ritual to get in that mindset to perform and succeed?
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I'll maybe start. Yeah, because when I played, sports psychology or mental health wasn't a thing, albeit it was a thing, but we just never spoke about it, or there was no self-improvement in that area. So, I played professional sport for 15 years, and for those of you who don't follow me, my legacy is basically going around fighting. That was it. I've got nothing to show the kids. There's no tries. There's no spectacular moments. It's me being red carded, yellow carded for fighting. I was like the goon of the sport. And that was because largely I felt that that's the way that I needed to play. And there was no one to manage that part of the game for me. And I remember I'd go into international games, I'd have the headphones on like Eminem, Dr. Dre, And then you'd go into the changing rooms, you'd be like smacking the boys, okay, come on, and then you'd go out and you do your warm up and you go in ballistic, and then you run out and you do the anthems. And then 20 minutes into the game, I'd be absolutely exhausted. I'd be blind. I beat up 3 people, but I mean, and I struggled. And I couldn't work it out why. And the one guy, when the psychology started to come in around 2013, 2014, 10 years too late for me, he said, you need to calm down. Have you tried taking your headphones off and actually being in the moment? And my last 2 or 3 years of my career, when ironically we won back-to-back Champions Cup, Premiership trophies, was actually being able to control emotion. And I think from the upbringing that I had and stuff like that, and not having my parents there to help kind of me manage my way through them emotional things, I used a violent sport. And I say that's what it is. A sport in which you have to be violent, you have to be aggressive, it's physical, it's man versus man, then actually how you manage that. And if I knew then what I know now, I joke about it, I would have been double the player that I was. So, but that is what it is. I wouldn't be the man or the person I am today to pass on them experience if it wasn't for them interactions.
Yeah, I think quite similar, relevant to your answers, really. I spent my whole childhood or youth career without kind of understanding, really knowing that I was quite angry, and that was kind of affecting the majority of my performance the majority of the time. Like, I didn't really win anything as a kid. Come second and third lots of times, but never really won anything. And then understanding the mind and the brain and how that worked was definitely a massive turning point for me once I did turn pro, and did start to see some other people and see things from really like different perspectives, and just kind of understand what works for you. And like I say, now I would say my mental side of things went from being my biggest weakness to probably one of my biggest strengths now, really. And I've got a very good understanding of myself, my mind, and what I need. I don't really or ever do any specific rituals or routines. I'm quite avoidant of that, because I feel like they could then lead to having a worse impact should you not be able to carry them out. But at the same time, I'm pretty well aware of when I need to avoid distractions, and at the same time when I think distractions can be a good thing as well, which is where I think even the YouTube stuff and the vlogging, can help. Like my wife on a mechanical say, like, your lips out, you're in a mood, go and talk to your camera for a little bit. And like, I do think, it's about understanding when distractions are good and when, you don't need distractions, and taking yourself off. And I think, luckily I was told by a few people I need to work on that. And I did, I listened. And like I say, I think that is one of my strengths now, is I have quite good understanding of my own brain.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Without segueing and going too deep, but I'm a father of 4, and anyone who's got children, trying to bring children up in this world now with social media, and I suppose the lack of purpose that some children find themselves having, and boys especially, just to be specific, around like masculinity and like purpose and aggression and violence and all of these things that come into it. And people can't underestimate the power of sport, and being able to have them conversations about what it truly does to young people. And I think that is, the one message when I talk to people now, is sport is such an amazing tool to give you a purpose. You want it to be hard. You want it to be challenging. You want to make mistakes. You want to fall off. You want to do all of these things, because it builds everything, like resilience, friendships, and all of these different things. And I think it's taken me a while to not contextualize my feelings around it, but like understand that there's a responsibility, and you're out there doing it, like we're out there talking about it, but just the power that sport can bring. And I suppose just lastly on this question before we close it off, just like, how is the state of your sport with youngsters coming through, the inspirations, with all the other things they can choose from now, Billy? Because it's a tough sport to get into, and life is easy for people now. Like, it's a lot easier for kids coming through. They don't go out and play and get dirty. I don't know what the stat is about them riding bikes, but there's less kids riding bikes and swimming and stuff like that. But in your sport specifically, what are you seeing?
It's a tricky one, because I would say 10 years ago, my sport was majority of riders coming to the end of their careers from other disciplines that then came to enduro and hard enduro and found like almost a second wind of their career, whereas now this riders starting from such a young age, I was kind of, there's been one of the first to move into it. I also did do trials my entire youth career, and then when I was 19 changed over to enduro, and at the time I was like the youngest, but now they've kind of been, there's kids, I go to a local event or see youth classes at British Championship races, and there's like, they're starting doing hard enduro and enduro from such a young age, which is obviously amazing to see, that there's such a bigger pool of riders. But then at the same time, I do feel like the riders now that are at the top have been at the top for so long because they had got to such a level at other disciplines. So it's like an interesting crossover really, where there's a really healthy amount of younger riders, but up to this point there hasn't really been any breakthrough or to challenge the current, I would say, top 10, or top 5, sorry, which has kind of been the same for the last 4 years. I think the more, the deeper the talent pool of the younger riders gets, it's inevitable they're going to develop skills to the point where they break through. But it's an interesting, I would say, a change of a point where it's gone from being kind of like I don't want to say old man sport, but I would say like a second wind sport, whereas now it's, riders doing it from such a young age. So, interesting crossover point, but at the same time, there's a very healthy depth of talent, I think, coming through now, and I see, such young riders out there, trying hill climbs, getting stuck and pulling. I think it's again, not massive in terms of, you look at other sports, of football or rugby, tennis, not like mainstream sports, but it's definitely heading in the right direction.
Yeah, mate, it's really cool. It's been class to have you and be in conversation with you tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an intimate event. It's been really cool. Belstaff, thank you so much. Like, I kind of stumbled my way through the initial intro, but it's an iconic British brand, like you're seeing it in films, like musicians wearing the stuff. I know in films a long time ago they were there, but it's really coming to the fore now, and to be crossing over into sport as well, like our sports as well, without speaking for Billy, but I know what you'll think about it because it's a cool brand. Thank you very much and for having us. So a big round of applause to Belstaff as well. Thank you.